Before I start, I pay my salute to Dr. B. Ramamurthy and Institute of Neurology, Madras Medical College, where I got my training. All of us know diabetes is the most common cause of peripheral neuropathy. About 50% of patients will eventually develop neuropathy in diabetes. The most common complication of diabetes, which involves only peripheral and autonomic nervous system, it forms about 50 to 75% of non-traumatic amputations. The duration and severity of hyperglycemia is an important risk factor for the development of neuropathy in patients with type 1 and type 2 diabetes. There are five major categories of neuropathy in diabetes mellitus. The first and foremost is length-dependent axonal neuropathy, that is distal symmetrical polyneuropathy. Next is acute neuropathies in the form of radiculopathies and treatment-induced neuropathies. Mononeuropathies, we have cranial and peripheral neuropathy. The most dreaded neuropathy is autonomic neuropathy, and there is also an increase in risk for chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. So the classification: peripheral neuropathy, autonomic radiculopathy, cranial mononeuropathy, and plexopathies. What is the definition of diabetic peripheral neuropathy? In Diabetes Care 2005 says the presence of symptoms and or signs of peripheral dysfunction in people with diabetes of the exclusion of other causes. All of us know the modified risk factors are poor glycemic control, alcohol, hypertension, smoking, and increased lipids. The non-modified risk factors are obesity, old age, male, longer the duration of diabetes, and ApoE genotype. What happens in diabetic neuropathy? There is hyperglycemia, which activates the polyal pathway reflex, which in turn causes increased oxidative stress. Thereby, these metabolic alterations, which induces endovascular dysfunction, causing reduced endoneural oxygen tension, which causes alteration in the neurotropic support. And also it activates the polyal pathway in the aldose reductase enzyme. There is accumulation of sorbitol, where it causes decreases myoinositol and decreased nerve growth factor, which causes diabetic neuropathy. It also decreases NADPH, decreased nitric oxide synthetase, reduced blood flow, ischemic damage, noxonal loss, and demyelination. Hyperglycemia also activates AGE precursors, protein kinase C pathway, and the exosomin pathway ultimately leads to oxidative stress. Case number one, a 58-year-old mechanic presented with 2-year history of numbness, tingling in his feet. Sensory symptoms progressed to above ankles. Also had intermittent pins and needle sensation in the feet without any weakness or muscle cramps. Examination revealed depressed ankle jerk with loss of pain and temperature, vibration, and touch to the ankles with positive Romberg test. Lab testing showed normal vitamin B12 and electrophoretic pattern of serum, and abnormal fasting sugar was 245 and a HbA1c of 9.5. The sural nerve action potential was not obtained, whereas the peroneal nerve CMAP was reduced and the nerve conduction was reduced. It indicates the patient has got axonal neuropathy in the lower limb. So the diagnosis is distal symmetrical polyneuropathy with axonal neuropathy in conduction. The most common form of diabetic neuropathy is distal symmetrical polyneuropathy. It's a length-dependent dying-back axonopathy. Primary involves the distal portion of the longest myelinated and unmyelinated sensory axons with relative sparing of motor axons. The main morphological abnormalities of the vasonervorum are present early in the course of this disease. What are the clinical features of this peripheral neuropathy? It is divided into large and small fiber neuropathy or both. The large fiber neuropathy mostly present as negative symptoms in the form of numbness or benumbed sensation or painless paresthesias. The examination revealed there is decreased vibration and joint position sensation, plus or minus sensory ataxia with absent deep tendon jerks and distal weakness. Whereas the small fiber neuropathy, which produces more of positive symptoms in the form of burning and shooting pain, decreased pain and temperature, preserved deep tendon jerks, with or without autonomic changes. So what are the tests for diabetic sensory motor neuropathy? For large fiber neuropathy, apart from nerve conduction studies, vibration perception threshold which will be elevated. For a small fiber neuropathy, there is quantitative thermal threshold which is elevated, and there is corneal confocal microscopy set test which gives reduced corneal nerve fiber length and density, which indicates neuropathy. Then autonomic test, we all know, postural hypotension, then supine and standing heart rate, RR interval variation, and sympathetic skin response. We should always look for other causes of peripheral neuropathy in diabetes patient. The classical presentation of peripheral neuropathy, the blood test required are B12 thyroid function test and serum electrophoretic pattern. The nerve conduction studies which show mainly a primary axonal neuropathy, sensory more than motor, mild demyelination, F latency prolongation, MAPS and H. Treatment, there is no known cure. We can slow the progression of the disease, relieve pain, and manage complications and restoring the function. Mayo Clinic generally recommends target blood sugar level between 80 and 120 milligrams for people aged 59 and younger without comorbid, whereas 100 and 140 for people aged 60 and older with comorbid. Tight glycemic control reduces the incidence of distal sensory polyneuropathy in type 1. Intense glucose control is only modestly effective in preventing neuropathy in type 2, as there are other comorbid factors. So lifestyle modification are also recommended along with blood glucose control. What are the drugs which are used in the treatment of neuropathy? Tricyclic antidepressants are given for mild to moderate pain. SNRIs, it will relieve pain. Then anti-seizure drugs, gabapentin, pregabalin, carbamazepine are used to treat nerve pain. The FDA approved duloxetine and pregabalin for diabetic neuropathy. So these are the doses given in the slide. The other drugs are mentioned: lamotrigine, valproate, tricyclic antidepressants, etc. For paresthesias, tricyclic antidepressants. For shooting and stabbing pain, carbamazepine, pregabalin, gabapentin are used. Lidocaine patch was regarded as possibly effective. There is insufficient evidence to support the use of alpha-lipoic acid. Aldose reductase inhibitors, there are few trials. So the Lancet says the first-line drugs are tricyclic antidepressants and SNRIs. If there is no effect, try another first-line drugs. If all the three drugs fails, then give opioids or tramadol. The most common cranial neuropathies in diabetes are 3, 4, 6. Facial mononeuropathy occur more frequently in diabetic than in non-diabetic patients. The diabetic third nerve palsy typically present with unilateral pain, ptosis, diplopia, and sparing of pupillary function. It's nothing but a microvascular ischemic neuropathy. It improves over 2 to 3 months. All of us know pupillary fibers are located outermost and spared in ischemia, whereas it is affected earliest in compressive lesion. This is the patient which shows left lateral rectus palsy with diabetes. Management, microvascular and microangiopathic cranial neuropathy. There is no specific treatment, usually resolves within 6 to 12 weeks. The associated Bell's palsy and diabetes mellitus, visited diabetic mononeuropathy. So in a study of 126 patients with Bell's palsy, diabetes was found in almost 40% of cases. A high frequency of taste disturbances found in patients who had no diabetes, as compared to only 14% of diabetic patients whose taste was affected. So we have to use steroids with caution. Next is the anterior ischemic optic neuropathy, which is a non-arteritic AION, is the most common form of ischemic optic neuropathy. It is usually present as painless visual loss with optic nerve swelling, acute monocular. The visual loss occurs because of the poor perfusion in the circulation of the posterior ciliary artery, which actually supplies the optic nerve head. In this case, patients are older, above 50, often have diabetes, hypertension, and other vascular factors. The first picture shows the acute ischemic optic neuropathy. The second picture shows the optic neuropathy following AON. The most debilitating form of neuropathy is diabetic autonomic neuropathy. It is detected in majority of the patients with neurophysiological testing. Why should we recognize diabetic autonomic neuropathy? Because 25 to 50% die within 5 to 10 years of diagnosis. The 5-year mortality rate is 3 to 5 or 5 times higher. It's a marker of adverse cardiovascular, renal, and cerebrovascular outcomes. The manifestations are in cardiovascular, there is sinus tachycardia, bradycardia with fixed heart rate in advanced cases, systolic diastolic dysfunction, orthostatic hypotension, and cardiac degeneration syndrome. In gastrointestinal, we have gastroparesis, diarrhea, constipation, fecal incontinence, genitourinary, erectile dysfunction, neurogenic bladder, and pseudomotor and vasomotor changes in the form of sweating disturbances, heat intolerance, dry skin, impaired vasomotor and edema, papillary disturbances, and hypoglycemia, unawareness. So these are the various manifestations of autonomic neuropathy. We all know the test for diabetic autonomic neuropathy, the bedside test. One is postural hypertension, and the heart rate variability to deep breathing, and sustain the hand grip to look for diastolic blood pressure. And test of predominantly sympathetic adrenergic function, the BP response to Valsalva, and also sympathetic skin response. In gastrointestinal, we have isotope-based breath test, and urological testing indicates post-viral residual and urodynamic studies. Treatment of diabetic autonomic neuropathy for orthostatic hypotension, we have to give water intake early in the morning, head and elevation by 6 to 10 inches, elastic stockings, sometimes plasma volume expansion by flow drop cortisone zero point 0.1 to zero point 0.6 milligram per day. Rarely midodrine 10 to 20 milligram thrice daily, alpha blocker, then droxidopa beta agonist in the form of 100 milligram 3 times daily may be given. For gastroparesis, frequent small meals and prokinetic drugs are used. Diabetic diarrhea, we can use clonidine. Atonic bladder, the last resort is bladder neck resection. For impotence, phosphodiesterase inhibitors, pentavalent injection and implant. There is an entity called diabetic polyradiculopathy, which is nothing but accelerated proximal and distal weakness with absent reflexes. The predominantly distal sensory loss. Mainly truncal and trigeminal sensory involvement is reported. Prominent dysautonomia, there is a rapid and progressive deterioration occurs. Nerve conduction usually shows axonal pattern. Nerve biopsy reveal axonal degeneration plus demyelination. So the immunomodulatory treatment has got some effect. Mononeuritis multiplex is defined as a disorder involving two or more named non-contiguous or multifocal peripheral nerve trunks. It's a stepwise progressive problem, painful distal extremity involvement, sensory motor multifocal abnormalities affecting the older population. We have to rule out vasculitis and Hansen disease in this type of patients. Intrapid neuropathy, median at wrist, ulnar at elbow, peroneal neuropathy at knee. It's a gradual onset and slow progression. The main problem is glucose derangement hits the peripheral nerve first, then becomes a second hit by the local factors related to entrapment, increased pressure, and elongation in the anatomically narrow sites, which is called double crush hypothesis. Treatment, pain management, local steroid splinting. Truncal mononeuropathy, it's an asymmetrical painful neuropathy, presents acutely in a dermatomal distribution over thorax or abdomen associated with local bulging of the abdominal wall and sensory loss along the involved dermatomes. Generally, it improves completely 3 to 12 months following treatment. Pain medication, topical agent, sometimes epidural block. Is it thoracic radiculoplexico Only time will tell. Diabetic amyotrophy or Bruns-Garland syndrome, otherwise called diabetic lumbosacral radiculoplexico. Actually, this may also involve cervical nerve roots, brachial plexus, or upper extremity nerves. The most likely cause of diabetic amyotrophy and the similar condition of lumbosacral radiculoplexico mainly ischemic injury from a non-systemic microvasculitis. So how it presents: acute asymmetric focal onset of pain followed by weakness involving the proximal leg with associated autonomic failure and weight loss. Progression over months followed by partial recovery in most patients. No treatment are proven to be effective for diabetic amyotrophy or for idiopathic lumbosacral radiculoplexural neuropathy. Oral steroids, IV methylpred, IVIG, cyclophosphamide may be given. Plasma exchange have no definite role. This is the picture which shows the sural nerve biopsy from a patient with the diabetic lumbar radiculoplexopathy showing perivascular lymphocytic inflammation involves two epineural arterioles. Corneal confocal microscopy, this is the overarching goal is to determine which patient with diabetes have a treatable neuropathy. Actually, it's a new biomarker for chronic inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy. Uh, it's a non-invasive and reproducible nerve imaging technique. The corneal nerve fiber loss may reflect the severity of neuropathy, and the quantification of the distinct cells around the plexus may help in CADP, subtyping clinical course and disease activity. However, further studies are required before corneal confocal microscopy can be considered as a valid surrogate endpoint for patients with CIDP. This picture is the corneal confocal microscopy, which shows the reduced nerve fiber in the cornea. There's an entity called superimposed CIDP in polyneuropathy. So how do we find out? Mainly prominent motor involvement, reduction in nerve conduction velocity, mainly demyelination. And if we do CSF, there will be elevated protein. And nerve biopsy will show inflammatory infiltrate. So there are difficulty in distinguishing polyneuropathy and CIDP. Why? Because clinical features may overlap. Nerve conduction show demyelination. CSF protein may be elevated in diabetic polyneuropathy. Nerve biopsy also show varying degrees of demyelination axonal damage. So the CIDP in diabetes mellitus, the main values of the motor conduction velocities are less than 70% of lower limb term normal, or distal latencies are more than 50% of upper limb term normal, conduction block of more than 50 when detected in multiple nerves. It's highly specific for CID. In a study of sural nerve biopsy, epineural perivascular T cell infiltrate, there is matrix metallopeptidase 9 was found in patients with CIDP and diabetes. These features were absent in diabetic neuropathy, which suggests they could represent a biomarker for CIDP. So these are the features of diabetic sensory polyneuropathy, CIDP, and CIDP in patients with diabetes. The CIDP in patients with diabetes occurs in older patients, short duration of diabetes with good glycemic control, features of CIDP without diabetes. So the CSO protein, uh, no, so not specific to distinguish from sensory neuropathy because the levels more than 1 gram per liter are unusual in diabetes. So the steroids should be avoided in CADP in patients with diabetes. We have to use IVIG. For CADP, we have to use IVIG or steroids is first line therapy. For sensory polyneuropathy, the symptomatic glycemic control of diabetes mellitus. So no diagnostic criteria offer perfect sensitivity. However, when the criteria are not fulfilled, a high clinical suspicion of CIDP warrants a treatment trial, especially the neuropathy is disabling. Case number 2, a 28-year-old woman with 14-year history of type 1 diabetes with poor glycemic control, no symptoms of neuropathy, admitted to the hospital with diabetic ketoacidosis due to UTI. Then she was treated in the hospital, and she started taking her insulin as prescribed after discharge from hospital. 3 weeks later, she presented with severe burning pain in her hands, legs, with no weakness or numbness. There is hyperalgesia and the distribution of pain. Nerve conduction EMG were normal. At the time of neurological evaluation, 6 weeks of hospitalization, HbA1c has decreased from 12 to 8. So examination revealed there is a length-dependent small fiber neuropathy. Normal strength reflexes, normal sensation to vibration and proprioception.
हाँ
They,
संजय जी,
except for Vallodynia to touch. She
हम
was
आए हुए
prescribed
थे
a
अभी एक्चुअली
antidepressant,
अपना
gabapentin.
मोबाइल को
So
भेजे
this
थे
is
लॉक
called
करके उसका
treatment-induced neuropathy,
स्क्रीन गार्ड बदलवाने के
which
लिए।
is seen in individuals with
बात
rapid
बंद
glycemic control on background of chronic hyperglycemia. So the severity of the syndrome reflects the
आराम
magnitude
करके
of
रहेंगे,
change in glucose control. So it
आइए
is
ना 7
very
बजे के बाद।
challenging and requires polypharmacy.
ठीक
It is of acute or subacute onset, mainly burning and aching pain, lower limbs, very rarely in the upper limbs, accompanied by widespread cutaneous contact hyperesthesia. Motor signs do not occur. So it frequently have renal and retinal problems simultaneously, suggest this diffuse microvascular process, and there is significant progression of proliferative retinopathy over a period of 12 months in this category. So avoid dramatic improvement in HbA1c A1C levels in individuals with chronic hyperglycemia is recommended. So limiting to change to 1% reduction in the HbA1c per month in these cases. I conclude my talk with this take-home message. All patients should be screened for diabetic neuropathy starting at the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes mellitus and 5 years at the diagnosis of type 1 and at least annually thereafter. We should have detailed history and examination in the clinical assessment. Symptoms and signs of autonomic neuropathy should be assessed in patients with microvascular and neuropathy complications. So tight glycemic control is the only strategy which has demonstrated to show prevention and progression of diabetic peripheral neuropathy and autonomic neuropathy. And lastly, an annual comprehensive foot examination is a must for all patients with diabetes. Thank you. Thank you for the patient here.
Thank you, Dr. Mugunandan, for your brilliant and detailed discussion. I think you have discussed in so detail that the question will not be much more there.